Hi and welcome back to my channel Modern Modis. In today's video I'm going to be making a button-down top and shorts matching set inspired by all these beautiful sets I've seen on Pinterest and Instagram. I'm going to be tracing this button-down shirt I bought a couple years ago to create the pattern for my button-down top. I already ironed this out and traced this top. Then I traced the sides and shoulder onto my paper. While I was tracing, I used the push pin method where I use a sewing pin to poke holes into my paper to mark seams onto my paper. But if you have a tracing wheel, which I could not find for the longest, but I just did a cleanup and I found it, use this instead. It's going to make the process much easier. So I used my sewing pin to poke holes into my paper along the armhole seam like this. These are the little holes I made during that process. I'm going to trace across those little holes to mark my armhole onto my paper. Then I use the same method to mark my shirt's neckline onto my paper and the button placket. I use those tiny holes I made to trace my neckline and use the marks for the button placket to trace my button placket onto my paper. Next, I went and added 1.5 inches for the button placket and marked a line at the length I wanted my shirt to be. I added enough seam allowance to create French seams because I just want all my edges tucked away, and I added 1/4 inch seam allowance to my neckline, 1.5 inch hem allowance to the bottom edge, and I'm going to do 1/2 inch seam allowance along the armhole, but I'll be trimming it down after sewing the sleeves on. My button placket will be 1 inch wide, so I added 1.5 inches here for the button placket, then I cut this out. For the back, I just folded my shirt in half and traced along the back edge and a side seam. And I used the sewing pin method to trace along the armhole and the neckline. I marked the back yoke. Then I added my 1/2 inch seam allowance to the side, armhole, and shoulder, and 1/4 inch seam allowance to the neckline. I added notches where my pleats would go and wrote in reminders to add seam allowance to the bottom edge of the yoke and the top edge of the bottom portion of the back. Then I added 1 inch here for the pleats. I traced my collar stand like so. I marked half of the collar stand I traced, added 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then added a reminder to cut on the fold. Then I repeated the same process with the collar. And now I have my collar and my collar stand. Last of all, I traced my shirt sleeve and added 1/2 inch seam allowance and 1.5 inch hem allowance. I traced my pattern pieces onto my fabric using random objects as weights to hold them in place. I cut out all my pieces and now it's time to assemble. I added pleats where I marked my pleat notches. Then I pinned my back yokes, by the way I cut 2 of those out, to the pleated edge and sewed them in place. I pressed the yokes the right way and top stitched. Now that my yoke is attached to the bottom portion of the back, I'm going to attach the fronts to the back at the shoulders and at the sides. I'm going to be doing princess seams, so instead of attaching everything right sides facing, I'm going to attach everything wrong sides facing. Now I'm going to sew along the shoulders and along the sides. Again, everything is wrong sides facing. So this is the upper side, this is the upside. Okay, so now I have everything sewn together. I sewed it very close to the edge, and now I'm going to turn it inside out so those seams are on the inside. I pressed the shoulders and sides and then pinned them in place and sewed 1/2 inch from the edge to finish my princess seams. It's just so neat. I love it. Here are my sleeves. I'm going to close them together on the sides, and then I'm going to attach it to my shirt. So I sewed the sides of my sleeves with princess seams as well by sewing the side wrong sides facing 1/4 inch from the edge and then turning it inside out and sewing 1/2 inch from the edge. Then with my shirt inside out and my sleeves right side out, I inserted my sleeves into my armhole and lined up the edges together and sewed my sleeves to my shirt. Then I overstitched the raw edges. Finally, I hemmed the sleeves with a double fold hem. Okay, so my sleeves are attached and hemmed, and now it's time to work on the collar. So hopefully everything goes nice and smooth. I already cut out all my pieces. I'm going to go and add fusible interfacing. So I added interface into the button plackets, each side of the collar, and each side of the collar stand. Then I pressed the bottom edge of one collar stand up 1/4 inch like this. To assemble the collar, I put each side of the collar together right sides facing and sewed the two together along the sides and top edge. I trimmed the corners and turned the collar right side out and pressed it. Then I pinned each side of the collar stand to the collar like this and sewed them together along the curved edge. I clipped along the seam allowance and turned it right side out, and I pinned the edge of the collar stand, not pressed up 1/4 inch, to my neckline and sewed it onto my neckline. Then I folded over and pressed my collar stand in place. So I went and I pinned this inner collar stand down, and I'm going to sew it in place from the top by stitching in the ditch. Then I top stitched along the button placket and collar stand edge. Progress. All I need to do is hem the bottom, and I'm just going to do that with a double edge fold. I love it so much. The only thing different I would have done is I would have moved my pleats closer to the center. But other than that, I love it so much. I think it's so cute. I love the length. I still need to do my buttons and my buttonholes, but before I do my buttonholes and my buttons, I want to just give myself a break from the top and jump into making the shorts. So I'm just going to trace these shorts to create my shorts pattern, and I'm going to do inseam pockets because those are the easiest pockets to do. For the front of the shorts, I traced the front of my shorts and added seam allowance, and for the back, I traced the back of my shorts and added an extra 4 inches to the side. I cut a back waistband which length matched the length of the top edge of my back shorts top edge times 2. I also cut 4 inseam pocket pieces. To assemble my shorts, I sewed the 2 front shorts together along the curved edge and the 2 back shorts together along the curved edge as well. I pinned on my pocket pieces like so and sewed each one on. Then I sewed my front shorts to my back shorts like this. I sewed my front waistband piece to my back waistband piece and pinned it to the top edge of my shorts right sides facing. After sewing it to my shorts, I folded over the edge 1/4 inch and then in half and pinned it in place. I sewed my waistband in place. I left an opening in the waistband and I cut a piece of elastic that fit my waist. So I went and finished my shorts by feeding my elastic through the waistband. I went and sewed the 2 ends of my elastic together. And then I sewed that little opening I left to feed the elastic through closed, and I went and I stretched the waistband out as I sewed 2 lines across the waistband. And then after I finished the waistband, I just went and I hemmed the shorts with a double edge fold like that. And now my shorts are complete. All I had to do left was add the buttonholes and buttons to the top, and guess what? My Singer machine broke. I've been using that Singer machine for so many years, and I'm so sad that it's broke, and I'm going to be finishing the project on my genome. Now I'm going to go and just sew my last buttonhole with this machine. I already did all the other ones. Now I have all my buttonholes sewn on, and I'm just going to take my seam ripper and I'm going to cut down the center of the buttonhole, but I'm going to use a sewing pin as a stopper. And I'm going to open all my buttonholes and then sew on buttons on the other side. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up. If there's anything you'd like to see me make, don't forget to leave it in the comments. Until next time, bye.